what we would also propose is that on land suitable for cultivation, we would like to arrange a project to propagate these plants, where we can farm the plants. Because one way of ensuring that the populations of the plants no longer decrease, but it's also, if we find the useful components that we want to extract, it will minimize the pressure on the wild population of the plants. We would also want to provide some degree of capacity building and provide training and employment for the communities, adjacent to the sites where the plants are grown or where we might want to propagate and plant up new things. So we would provide training, we would provide institution building, and we hope that the communities would be willing to participate and be the beneficiary of this. Also in terms of your research institution, how we would want to proceed is also to have further the capacity of we would want all the basic initial research to be undertaken at your institution, and especially your indigenous plant assessment unit. And we would, wherever there might be capacity gaps, we are prepared at our pharmaco research laboratories to provide additional technical support for you. So we don't propose at this initial phase of understanding and exploring to take anything out of the country. So everything is going to be based here and using a lot of your researchers and most of the primary research as we involved. We also think that in terms of the traditional knowledge, we would like to have some of our people as well understand better how the communities have utilized these plants, but not just in terms of for the use, but how it has been managed and conserved in the past, because I'm sure that there might be useful lessons we can learn about how to implement conservation measures. The people who have lived with it and used it and have it as a sacred word, as a sanctuary, we try to respect. So basically what we want to do is understand how the plant has been used, what are the properties, and how we can extract it in a manner that does not really further place any pressure or stress on the plants or the communities we are managing. So we would rely on you, the government, and the indigenous communities to tell us where it is and where you think we should put it and how much value you're prepared to allocate. And that is totally your decision. We will be guided by that, and we can decide if the research that takes place suggests that there's some commercial components to this. We can discuss that later, but we are now in the research phase of the project, and we will just focus on this.
Many thanks for that. Because our next set of questions were to come on research as well as the benefit that's going to come to the communities. But probably before we go into that, I have just a quick question for you. In case you find that we lack in terms of capacity in maybe some area where you cannot do research within our nation, what's your plan B on that?
If the research cannot be conducted, some elements of research cannot be conducted here, because our laboratories back in Armadale can do that kind of thing. We have been doing that in the past. What we propose to do is we will do a technical exchange where we will have your researchers, we will bring them to our laboratories and expose them to new techniques and equipment so to enhance their capacities doing research on the product in our laboratories, so that nothing is lost and your people learn how to do.
All right, thanks for that. Once again, I'm going to hand over to our Minister, Christina, and she'll be asking you on issues to do with monetary benefits. All right.
Just listening to the discussion here, I'm getting a sense that our rights are properly recognized, so we don't have to worry about that. Or I just want to make sure that point, and I think that things come down to which land we have title to. And Land Minister, you mentioned that land has to be registered in that registry. We propose that process will take place independent of this company's interest, so that we have we don't have the conflicting. We don't fight for the resources. We just want to protect our rights. And the land registry information is reflecting our usual way of use of the land, and it's not influenced by the external influence on the resources that happen to occur on our land. So I just want to make clarification that there's recognition that community we own all the resources that occur on our land, and that land will be clarified when we register in consultation with the minister, clarified through the registration to the land registry.
Now, if I wanted to be mean, I could look at and say, we're negotiating now, and what you are asking us to do is to give you future recognition of land that is not currently registered, but that will be registered at some point in the future. That's, whereas if we make a contract today, that land would not be yours, because you may have been living on it, but you would not have registered it in the public ownership books. So I need to consult with my ministers here as to whether what side we would like to take in this particular issue. That's, of course, we're interested in maintaining peace and harmony in our country. So yes, we would consider registering your land as quickly as possible and working with you to legitimately identify those areas that you have used in the past and are continuing to use to identify where you would be going through. One of the things that my minister asked me to address was you've been very generous in outlining how you would help our country in terms of advancing its technology, sharing in research, sharing in both in situ and developing the scientific skills and know-how of our scientific industry. But what were you envisioning in terms of benefit sharing on the monetary side? That's because I understand you're talking about just wanting to come in and do research right now. What happens when we start to shift and find something that is of commercial interest? What are you envisioning then?
There are two things that could happen. Yeah. One, when the research reaches to a level where we think that there's a commercial potential, we would want to set the record clear from now as to what might be that potential share. And in the first instance, as was mentioned, there's going to be a joint patent. If you find that acceptable, you will need to decide joint with whom in your country, whether it's the state as the party or it is the community as the party, and the ministries of however it is so structured. That is not a decision for us, but whatever it is. And we are prepared to suggest that whatever it is, it's between our company funding the research and your having research is going to be a joint, where it's going to be a 50-50 partnership. So if it's a 50-50 partnership, if you're going to split that by 10 different groups, that's your 50% will be divided by 50%. Divided up to accumulated at 50%. The other thing we're suggesting in terms of the other benefits, if then there's a commercialization of the products, then I think we might probably want to have another session where we can negotiate what the percentage on that on sales of the product or whatever it is, because it's at this stage we can't say what that might be because we have not yet started the research, but we can agree in principle and in writing to have a percentage, and that there would be another negotiation process when we understand what the full commercial potential will do. So I don't think we should decide at this stage on a percentage, but I agree in principle that we can have a percentage allocated to whomever party is that percentage should go to. Or, as the case might be, we prepare to suggest in terms of wherever or whoever has control of the major portion of the lands or the plants that we need, whether what they might want for in exchange might be not just a percentage, but a development plan for the community, which might bring more immediate benefits to the community and something way out into the future, and we can sit down and negotiate around that as well. But the immediate benefits right now from the research phase is really going to be the training, the capacity building for the scientists, training for the community, and the employment in the project for the propagation, for the extraction, and so on.
I think this all sounds quite logical, but what concerns me are the upfront costs of our government in terms of processing the contracts, in terms of granting the permits for both the trade, the internal domestic trade, and to assess the extent of the resource at this point in time, whose property it's located on, and just even to start processing the land claims of our local and indigenous communities. So there will be some potentially extensive burden on our government administrators, which makes me somewhat concerned about potential costs. I'm wondering, I've seen in the past that there have been advances made to help cover some of the national governmental costs.
Well, Madam Minister, I'm happy you raised that, because I was kind of concerned that it hadn't come before, and that maybe you were really richer than we anticipated, or had a grant from the German government that was taking care of that. But in terms of, as you may know, the Democratic Republic of Armadale provides development assistance to many countries in the region, and in terms of the development assistance package that we're providing, we are prepared to develop as a complementary project a resource assessment. And in that resource assessment, we will have our experts basically have the lead, but we will also train your people in terms of how to do the assessment so that the knowledge isn't lost and that your people will be able to do assessments of other regions that may be of interest. But right now, we just focus the assessment on the primary areas which the indigenous people know are the areas where this plan occurs. They also have a sense of, they know where the sacred sites are. So it will be easy to identify where those are and at least generally decide on a rough boundary as to where they are, to have them as an exclusion, so unknown goes. So we're prepared to facilitate this assessment.
All right, thanks for that. Now we have questions also for you and also for our community members there. We understand that we have invested so much in terms of our time and resources as a state. And how are we to ensure that you won't run to our neighbor and take advantage of the conflict prevailing and probably loot their resources, assuming that we find a research of economic value? How is our nation protected and how do we get to benefit? And I think once you answer that, then we move on to our community.
Let me answer your question with a question, Chief Minister. What guarantee do we have that after we train your people and expose them to the new technologies and equipment, that you will run off and patent this thing on your own?
We would definitely love to do that. All right, then I guess those are some of the clauses which you need to include in the contract, and I think they should all be legally binding, and thanks for that. And then to our community, our Minister of Community Empowerment has some questions for you. We want to ensure that you really are benefiting from this.
Thank you. We noted that you were speaking on behalf of both the and the other community. But what we're interested in is that one of the communities is nomadic and the other is settled. And of course, if we start to negotiate on access to land and access to the resources on that land, what we're interested in knowing is will there be any conflicts between the nomadic peoples and the settled peoples in terms of ownership of the resources and access to the resources? And so we wanted to know what you proposed in that regard.
we discussed about that issue among the peoples, Mel and M. We agreed to have equal sharing of the benefit to come to our community. Mel People Foods settled as clear ownership of the land, and also has biocultural community protocol. And people uses the same piece of land, or land being used by two people that overlap to a great extent, and people are the ones who has more knowledge, more traditional knowledge about resources, particularly your land. So we have fair give and take in that, and we agree to have equal sharing of the resources. So we don't expect there will be conflict among us on that issue. Since I have a microphone, I have my points, our points. Should there be a pick and map being signed in this project? We request that pick and map should be signed. Then we also should be the one of the secretary to that, so that our point is being reflected in those two agreements and contract. Particularly since this involves the use of traditional knowledge, we strongly push for that. Thank you very much.
Good, thank you. But to Madam Vice Minister, could I suggest as well that it's part of the assessment that we propose to do. We will also provide an anthropologist to live and work with the communities to better understand the dynamics, because we also know from previous experience when there's profit or there's money comes into a community, the dynamics in the community begins to change and it becomes a threat to the success of the future of the project. So we would also propose and provide the expertise to study the community and the use of the lands, and to be able to detect later on when changes are going as a consequence of the success of the project. So we may be able to sit down and work with some sort of corrective action before it gets too late, and we prepare to also contribute this to the development of the indigenous communities.
Thank you. We do, in fact, in our country have very, very good institutions and very good anthropological knowledge and understanding. But as my colleague has iterated earlier in relation to the resource assessment, what we really need is the support to enable our people to undertake the negotiations within the country. And so what we would be looking for is, rather than perhaps technical expertise, we'd be looking for financial resources to support our own institutions to undertake these negotiations, and so we hope that you will be comfortable with that.
Well, actually we'd be comfortable with a joint approach, and we would have our people and your people undertake the research.
All right, many thanks for coming to this meeting. I don't know if you still have any other business. You can just put it on the table.
Thank you, Minister, but the other business we can do it under the table.
I think that was a nice word at the end of this session. First of all, congratulations to our key negotiators and the supporting advisors. This was really fun to listen to you and to watch you bargaining and negotiating here. We are a little bit, we're still in time in the overall time frame. There's a few issues now we need to tell you regarding lunch, the lunch break, which we now going to start.
So everyone, if you have your general program book, if you go to page 21, or if you can borrow someone who has one, and
to interrupt, one point I forgot to mention, and Andreas reminded me. After lunch, when we come back, we would like to have a quick feedback session, to reflect on, the interests that you identified and how you were able to achieve the goals, and just to get your impressions, what were the challenges, and so on and so forth. So just that, we're going to come back to evaluate kind of.
Okay, so we will be trying to come back at 2 o'clock. If you look on that, as you can see at the bottom, we have 3 different categories. Now where it says the Latte Hotel and Jeju, these are the restaurants that are located inside the hotel, not in this building. In the hotel, when you exit from this building, the one that's to your right, okay? Now, as you can see, there's an approximate price range that you have there right next to them, and the